Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat. I am your host, of course. And today's episode is going to be about how sometimes it takes as long as it needs to take for you to learn a specific lesson. This is for anybody who is on a personal growth journey, who has been doing a lot of personal work, self-awareness work, trying to make better decisions or different decisions and choices than they've normally made. And they still catch themselves having to learn the same lesson over and over again. They're making the same mistakes. It's ending the exact same way. And they're frustrated as to why. And one thing that I've had to learn throughout my own journey is that there are many times where a specific lesson has to take its time to sink in to us. We cannot bypass that part of the process. And this is really frustrating to accept. But I think it is important in terms of showing yourself grace and compassion, because that is a significant part of the personal growth journey, right? Practicing grace and compassion towards yourself. And I think a lot of us avoid doing that, or we don't want to, or we don't feel like it's right to do that. We feel like maybe we're coddling ourselves, or it's like, we should be just making the better decisions so we don't have to show ourselves compassion and grace for when we make the same mistake again. And it's like, that's the opposite of what we're supposed to be doing, especially if you are a perfectionist. Those of us who are perfectionists, who feel like, okay, I made the mistake, I'm never going to make that again. I can never make that again. And they strive to be perfect moving forward. They are doing everything in their power to avoid making a mistake that requires them to show themselves grace and compassion, because maybe they've been conditioned throughout childhood to not have been shown that grace and compassion towards them every time they made a mistake. So now it's kind of this internal belief of, I can't be showing myself that. It's not right for me to show myself that. I don't maybe deserve, or I'm not worthy of grace and compassion. So that means I must never make a mistake. So when you do make a mistake and you make the same mistake over and over again, you are struggling with accepting that this is part of the path. This is part of the journey of personal growth and personal development. Now, of course, I think this is very specific to when you make the same mistake, but you don't realize you're making it, right? You might be making different choices. You might be trying to align onto a different, version of yourself, trying to make choices that are not what you made the last time, but maybe it ends up exactly the same way. And I think that is because there are deep, unhealed wounds within us that take us to exactly the place that we believe we are worthy of being at. And if we have a lot of self-limiting beliefs, if we have a lot of self-worth issues, we'll end up in the same place over and over again, despite what path we take to get there, if that makes sense. So as you begin your, process of making new decisions, realigning, you're making different choices, and you're like, yeah, see, I'm doing something different this time around. I'm doing it different. It looks different. And then, however long it takes, a couple of months, couple of days, whatever, you end up in a position that you've been in before. It feels exactly the same, where it's reflecting the same kind of reality, or it's reflecting the same kind of identity to yourself. It's because you have gone to exactly the same place you're used to going, just through a different path. And that is an opportunity for you to show yourself grace and compassion, because there is still something that you need to learn. That's why you're ending up exactly the same place. Now, of course, this is not to disregard any sort of external, societal, cultural things that prevent us from changing our reality and our experience. Of course, there are many things in life that we end up in the exact same place because of things that we cannot control. External things, systemic issues, of course, right? I'm just talking about the things that are within our control, the decisions we make, and that are often guided by an internal narrative that we might not know is running in the background. We might not truly see it, but it's there and it's very deep. Or maybe we do see it and we are trying to make decisions that combat it, that go against it, to change it, to make it more positive, and yet it still keeps coming up because of how deeply ingrained it is in us. It's not easy to reprogram ourselves in this way. It's not easy to remove and replace these narratives with something different. It takes so much time, so much effort. And I say this as somebody who still struggles with her own inner narratives that pop up, and going through the experiences where initially I'm like, okay, yeah, see, I'm making different decisions. I'm gravitating towards different kinds of people. I am trying to, start my day differently, whatever that is for you. And realizing that, oh, wow, and I'm in exactly the same place I was before, despite what path I took, despite the differences, despite the changes, I'm exactly where I am right now. And this might be a bit disheartening for anybody who's like, well, then what's the point of doing anything different? What's the point of changing it? The point is the growth, right? The point is to show yourself that you can do something different. So like if you are asking yourself, what's the point of me being more vulnerable with someone if with this new person that I'm being vulnerable with, I end up in exactly the same place where I was with the person that I wasn't being vulnerable with? Why am I pushing myself to be vulnerable, which is uncomfortable and feels icky at times, if I'm going to be exactly in the same place? And it's like, it's not about the outcome ultimately, right? It is, for the most part, about the journey, the exploration, the growth within yourself, to show yourself, oh yeah, I can be vulnerable. That's something that I am good at, and it's not scary anymore because you've shown yourself that you can do it. Now, of course, we want to create a different outcome for ourselves, so that is fine. But I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that it takes time, and it's going to take as long as it needs to take for you to learn that lesson, for you to realign in a way that feels right and appropriate for what you need. Everybody's path and journey is completely different. Everybody's timing is completely different. For you, it might take longer. For somebody else, it might take even longer than it took for you. For someone else, it might take way less time. You have to just lean into that. You have to accept that it's going to take as long as it needs to take for you to learn whatever lesson you need to learn. So you might have to repeat this pattern over and over again. Of course, trying your best to make different decisions, different choices, trying different things, showing yourself that you're capable of doing something different, sure. But if it ends up exactly the same, it's taking its time. It's taking the time it needs to take to teach you what it needs to teach you, ultimately. And I think allowing yourself to have that space for acceptance is really, really important, because that ties into showing yourself grace and compassion, right? If you accept that it's going to take as long as it needs to take, I have no choice in the matter. It's going to do its thing. I'm doing the only thing I can do, really. The only choice I have in this is to change the way I show up, right? To try and show up differently, show up in ways that are aligning with a different version of myself, sure. But when it comes to actually getting to a place where I have a different outcome, it's going to take as long as it needs to take for me to really, really deeply absorb what I need to absorb and to let it really sink in so that I can have a significant shift in the way I see myself and in the way my life looks or the way my relationships look or whatever. It's going to take as long as it needs to take. You cannot control that part of it. And a lot of it is subconscious work too. It's not just about the conscious part of it. Of course, that is really important, right? Again, making those decisions that you need to make actively, consciously, to change how you show up. But a lot of it is also subconscious. It's things that we can't actively or I guess consciously control by seeing it for what it is. They run so deep, and it's just a matter of letting what you learn, the growth, the change really settle, sink in, and take its time to percolate. It needs time to percolate. And that's just part of life. That is the process of it. And we can't control that. And I know it's scary, it's frustrating, it's annoying. You want to just get to a place where you're like, see, I've made a different decision and I have a different outcome now. Great. It's showing me that I'm making progress, that I'm improving. But that's not how it works. And it's so annoying, but it's going to take as long as it needs to take. And you just have to let yourself be along for the ride. Control what you can, steer yourself in the direction that you can, test things out, try things out. It doesn't have to be about the outcome necessarily. It can be about the journey, about showing yourself what you're capable of and showing yourself that you can switch things up a little bit, and it's okay. And practicing vulnerability, practicing self-expression, practicing whatever else you feel like you struggle with, and seeing what happens. And if the same thing happens again, okay, fine. I'll try something different and see what happens then. But if you're making the same mistake, you're ending up in the same place, you feel like I keep, gravitating to these kinds of people, and I thought I was gravitating to somebody different, but now they're the same kind of person, I'm realizing, okay, there's still something you need to learn. There's still something there. And you might be doing that internal work. You might not realize it though. Or your subconscious might be doing it and you're not realizing it. And then one day it might just click into place. And that'll be your timing. And it's okay. It doesn't have to be the same as somebody else's. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We have to let go of this feeling of perfection in terms of our growth as people. Some days it'll feel like we're taking 10 steps back. Some days it'll feel like we're taking 10 steps forward. Some days it'll feel like we're in exactly the same place. And that's life, honestly. And it's something that I have really had to come to terms with, and it's really helping me in my personal growth journey as somebody who has been doing it for a while, who feels very, I feel like I've made really good strides and progress. This is the one thing that's really made me feel like I'm hung up and I can't move forward. It's the acceptance part and letting things unfold as they need to. Because, it's going to take as long as it needs to take for you to learn whatever it is that you need to learn. You might not even know what it is you need to learn, and then one day you'll realize, oh, this is what I needed to learn. And then it'll click into place. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you some reassurance that you're doing it okay. And nobody's doing it right. And you're doing it okay. And you'll learn and you'll grow and you'll change and things will happen as they need to happen. So yeah, if you want to talk about this in more detail with me, feel free to book a one-to-one call. Obviously, I'm not a therapist. I just like talking about these things. I also have a Substack where I write about these topics, and you can follow me on my social media where I post other content. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.